Whether you're working on a degree or taking a continuing education or business class, chances are good you're going to need to share your thoughts in a paper. So we'll talk today about how to write a thesis statement. I'm Erin Labax. This is High Value Writing. Thanks for being here. We're going to look at how to get this done in just 4 steps. And by the way, if you're writing just at work only, not for school, this is still applicable to a report, an article, a proposal, where you still want that central point that you offer in the beginning. Okay, these are the 4 steps we're going to cover. And I want to say quickly, though, if you also wanted to see how to write the entire introduction for an academic paper, including your thesis, we do have a video that covers the whole introduction. And if you actually were looking for writing your introduction, your thesis, and your whole entire paper, we also have a video on writing the whole essay. Okay, back to this briefer video on thesis statements. We are going to cover how you can start with your topic or idea. Maybe that's given to you by your teacher. Maybe it's not. Maybe you have to think of the topic. Then you can create a question within that topic. Then you can answer it, which in some cases, that answer might be your thesis statement on its own. Probably if you are doing an informative paper, that could be the case. However, and there's an asterisk here for a reason, we're going to come back to this at the end, you usually need an angle. And what if you don't include an angle? Well, you'll see it makes our thesis statements not very strong without that angle. So let's get into how to do the 4 steps, and we're going to work through about 3 different examples as we go. Okay, here I have followed the 4 steps, and this is just me thinking in my head, right? Maybe somebody said, Erin, you need to write a report. Go pick a topic. Maybe they say, this is sustainable studies. We want you to write on something for the environment, but that's all the direction I've gotten. I want to focus on solar power. So now it's up to me to create an interesting question within that topic. Now, this cannot be a yes or no question, right? Or you won't have a whole lot to write for your paper. So we usually want to start that question with how, why, in what ways, for what reasons. Questions that will lead you to a more complex answer than a yes or no. So my topic here, I'm thinking, hey, how come more of us don't use solar power? Well, it might be the access. So my question will be, how can we increase access to home solar power? My answer will be through financing plans, helping people pay monthly because most people don't have a lump sum to get it all paid for. But I do want to take an angle. I don't want to say something that will just feel obvious, like it's easier to buy a solar plan with financing. We know, right? So I need my angle to make this more of a claim, more specific, more targeted. I want to focus on young homeowners, maybe first-time buyers for my paper. So let's see how that turns into a thesis. I'll start with a thesis that does not have an angle yet. And this was step 3, answering my question. We can increase access to solar power by helping companies offer financing plans. True, okay? So the issue with an angle-less thesis is we might just say, sounds true, sounds like a fact. If you're writing an informative paper or report, that might be okay. You might be saying, here's the truth, here's the fact that I will show you about in this paper. But often, when you're writing an essay for school especially, typically your teacher will want you to take a claim, an angle, almost something arguable, debatable. I'm going to get my angle on young homeowners and just get a little more targeted with my topic and my thesis that way. So now my thesis has become, by offering financing plans, solar companies can help young homeowners embrace affordable, sustainable power use. So you can see how it got a little more complex there. Let's look at another, and then we'll really get into this idea of the angle a little more and why it's so important. I'm going for a history topic now, if you're in school, and maybe we do have kind of a prompt. In this example, I thought I'd throw in a prompt. Not a very specific prompt, though. Write about an event in history that impacted people you care about. Kind of a cool topic, but I care about a lot of things and a lot of people. What will I choose? All right, I'm going to choose suffrage, the sort of academic word for voting rights. Not everybody has had these rights for all of history, right? So I'm going to zero in with my question on women in the US, How did American women achieve suffrage in 1920? What was happening? What were all the efforts that all the advocates made fighting for voting rights? One of the ways, it turns out, is when they wanted to make voting legal, available federally, they looked at, well, some states already have these laws. Maybe we could use those to advocate, argue for a federal law. So my angle is going to be, actually, we have that situation going on now with different laws. And so I'll have an angle where I compare 1920 to now in some ways, making it more than just a factual thesis. So here I am, again, at the top here, I'm just answering the question without an angle yet. Voting rights advocates leveraged, used state voting laws as part of their work towards federal laws. And so again, if I'm writing an informative paper, that might be enough. Now my job is to show how that worked. What were the steps that they went through? But I want to get more complex, get more specific. Your teacher will usually want that. So I'm going to take this angle of comparing that to what happens with today's laws, federal versus state. 1920s suffrage advocates focused on state laws supporting voting rights, much like we've seen with today's legislation on same-sex marriage and cannabis, and others too, right? State laws, federal laws. We still see that same tendency. Okay, so what happens if I don't have an angle and I am writing a persuasive paper? Well, what's going to happen is it'll sound like you're talking about just a fact, when actually you've been asked to write an argument, right? So here's an example of a fact. Many cities are hotter in low-income areas and cooler in high-income areas. We've seen this as the planet gets warmer, that cities, often in the low-income areas, there's more asphalt and fewer trees and things like that. Again, that would work well for an informative paper maybe. But then I'm thinking, yeah, it kind of sounds like just a fact. And if you've turned in a thesis that's just a fact, you might be getting a comment back like, what's the argument? What's the debate? What's the claim? And so here's a tip. If you read your thesis, practicing, just reading it over, and you feel like you could say, so what? We know. You might need to get an angle, all right? So let's look at how I would add an angle for this. First, we have to think about what could be all the different aspects of this issue. Well, I could think about climate justice, what's fair for different groups of people. I could think about what actions a city might need to take or want to take. Or I could think about laws and zoning and neighborhoods and urban planning. So it's great to kind of brainstorm what are all the ways this thesis could go. And then you'll find one that's interesting and debatable. And that way you can add your angle. Urban planners should, that sounds debatable to me, incorporate green belts, long park areas, into low-income neighborhoods to reduce health disparities happening from all this heat. Can you argue with that point of view? I think you can. So that means I have an angle, I have a claim, I've made it debatable. All right, so try those 4 steps and you should be able to come up with an interesting thesis that you can get behind for writing your paper after that. Let me know if you have questions. I'll be happy to help you. You can leave your thesis in the comments and I'll get back to you. Thanks for being here. Good luck on your paper.